From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Good evening, everybody. We're back. We're live in the new year. It's January 9th, and things have been very intense. And if you're following the news, and everyone's following the news, my daughter and I live in Beverly Hills, we're at the southeastern tip of Beverly Hills, and there are major fires within 30 minutes of where I live. And we actually got an evacuation notice today on our phones by mistake. And my daughter and I looked at each other like, oh, we better get the hell out of here. It's really scary here in LA. I've been here 44 years. I lived through the 94 earthquake. I lived through the 1990 riots and everything else, man. This is really, really bad. And I have some friends I can't find. I have friends who have evacuated, and I can't find them. So I wanted to do the show tonight to do it and to move forward. But my daughter and I have suitcases packed at the door, man. And if we get a notice, we're going to have to bail. So it's a very sad time in Los Angeles. My thoughts and prayers literally are with my friends all over LA County, several of whom I don't know where they are right now. And I hope everybody is okay. If anything you can do to volunteer, to give shelter, to help anyone, to donate to charity, please think about it, because it's really quite awful. It's like an atomic bomb went off in Los Angeles. It's unreal. Having said that, now on a lighter note, tonight is the 1-year anniversary of this show. My first show was actually January 11th, but it's close enough. 1-year anniversary last year. My first show was with my friend Dee Wallace, the actress from E.T. I'd like to do a little shout out. Thank you very much to Margie Kay and my brother Race Hobbs, my producer, for giving me the opportunity to do the show for a year. We've had some remarkable guests on the show, man. We've had movie stars and the biggest UAP people on the planet Earth. And it's a lot of fun to work with Margie and Race. And without them, I wouldn't have this opportunity. So Race, thank you, brother. And Margie, thank you very much. 1-year anniversary tonight. I just wanted to mention that. We have a very special guest tonight. I am excited about it. I just spoke to him today for the first time. We've been emailing for about a year and a half. But we spoke today by phone, and we just met online a few minutes ago. And I'll read his bio now. Embracing the legacies of both his grandfather, Major Jesse Marcel, renowned for his role in the iconic Roswell, New Mexico UFO crash of 1947, and his father, Jesse Marcel Jr., a medical doctor. Jesse Marcel III is an accomplished American inventor, producer, writer, and has had a profound impact on the fields of propulsion, energy, and exo-life studies. With a passion for exploration and innovation, Jesse pursued a comprehensive education in aerospace engineering and finance during his college years. Throughout his career, he's left an indelible mark on the world of invention and creativity. His work has been awarded, listen to this, 8 patents. Jesse's work has received 8 patents, both in the U.S. and around the world. Jesse has secured his standing within the aerospace and industrial sectors with the Spokane, Washington-based company Airborne Motor Works. We'll talk about that a little later. At the helm of design there, he's the chief design engineer. Jesse plays a pivotal role in conceiving revolutionary technologies that push the boundaries of transportation and power generation. I do that too in my spare time, just so you all know. I'm only kidding. Balancing his technical pursuits with the creative, another of Jesse's notable ventures is with the film production company called Abstract Sight. He is a writer and producer there, and he has 2 projects in development at Abstract Site. One is called Timegate, and the other is called In Search of Inalienable Proof. And I'm looking forward to seeing both of those when they're completed. Jesse has long been a figure in the media. He's appeared in an episode of Ancient Aliens, where he delved into the intriguing mysteries surrounding extraterrestrial encounters and their impact on human history. He's also appeared in one of my all-time favorite shows, History's Greatest Mysteries, in an episode called Roswell, the First Witness, and he's appeared in the classic TV series Unsolved Mysteries. Jesse is a founding member of my group I co-founded last year with Stephen Bassett called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. He's a founding member, and he will soon release a new book entitled Project Blindfold, which we'll get to tonight. Jesse and his wife and his kids live in Spokane, Washington, and please let's welcome special guest Jesse Marcel III.
Well,
there he is.
having me.
How did I do? Did I do okay?
You made me sound more than I probably, or better than I actually am, probably.
Well, I told you today when we talked on the phone, I'm a publicist, man. I've been doing this for 41 years, 41 years this month.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know how to do this kind of stuff, my friend. It's so nice to finally meet you. Thank you for doing this dopey show for me. And thank you for being on my 1-year anniversary dopey show. I appreciate it. Sure. So I always ask my guests this first question, just to get a feel of who you are. Just tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what were your interests as a child.
I grew up in Montana, kind of out in the sticks, as they say, out of Helena, Montana, about 8 miles out. So I had a really great childhood, grew up in the mountains, spending nights out under the stars with friends and family. Dad built a big telescope in the backyard. It was actually like 20 acres, but he built a big telescope out there. And yeah, so we were like, like I said, it was a very fun way to grow up. I have this here. I kind of this book right here kind of started everything, and it's just full of projects. And I and my brother and sister and my father went through that and built a lot of things that today they would probably hang you for trying to put together. But yeah, from our own rocket fuel to you name it. He built an atom smasher, all that kind of thing. But it was, again, a very interesting childhood, a little bit different. Spent a lot of time in Montana. Went to spend some of the summers down in Louisiana with a family, with my grandfather and his wife Vio. And but a very good life, very country boy, riding motorcycles, horses, and living in the country. So
it sounds like Travis Walton a little bit. Are you friends with Travis Walton? Have you ever met him?
We've met several times, so I'd like to think we're friends.
Yeah, because I just read his book, and he was a very rugged outdoorsman. Horses, motorcycles, cutting, chopping down trees, man. He was like a superhero, this guy. All right, so let's jump in. Can we see slide number 1, please? Okay, so this is a famous person. This is your grandfather, Major Jesse Marcel. Tell us a little bit about your grandfather before the big event happened.
Well, my grandfather, he ended up he as a kid, he did some interesting things. He was much into building radios and that kind of thing. And with a little bit of money he could put together, he'd build his own radios. Always got in trouble for it, apparently, because, why are you wasting your time doing this stuff? He's building them in a barn out behind the house. He went from there, and he ended up by moving into kind of a business of fixing people's TVs and radios and that kind of thing. He actually patented a special little device for, at the time, was novel, which was basically an output on the back of the TV going from 1 socket to 3 sockets, something like that. Kind of fun. So he started the inventor bug way back when with us. He ended up by going into working for Shell. He worked with maps, that kind of thing, topographic maps, and that thing with Shell. And then when the Second World War happened, he signed up and was actually ended up by going to intelligence school. I'm obviously very proud of the gentleman. He in intelligence school, he was in the very first class of intelligence, and after they graduated, he turned around and started teaching that class.
Wow.
So again, a very smart guy, and that ended up into a world of intelligence, and then he was eventually assigned down to the 509th Air Bomb group down in Roswell, Mexico. But
was he from Louisiana?
Yeah, he grew up in Louisiana. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Race number 2, please. Okay. So, Jesse, you have a very famous last name in ufology, obviously.
Yeah.
Tell us, as far as your research, and I'm sure you've researched it far more than I have, what really happened in July 47 near Roswell? What do you know that happened for sure?
Well, my grandfather went to the local police station in Roswell to look at some debris that a rancher had found out on a ranch, a ranch hand actually, at Roswell. And he said, after going to the local people, he came to Roswell and said, "Hey, can you guys make heads or tails of this?" And the local police couldn't figure it out, and they called the air base. And then my grandfather was sent down to take a look at this debris, basically, or so just a bunch of junk, really. And he went through it and thought, well, I can't really make heads or tails of it. Went back to the base, and that's where they decided to go ahead and send him out to where all this debris was laying. And when he went out there, when he drove out to the site, he just kind of assessed the amounts of debris, what the crash site looked like, and those kind of things. I'm saying it was a crash site. I can't say it at the beginning. He was going out there saying it was a crash site, but it ended up being
it was a debris field, really.
a
right?
debris field, exactly.
Right. Okay.
And he kind of said something is kind of famous. It was adopted quickly after that. Was that he felt like what he was looking at was not made by human hands, and basically gathered a bunch of it up and then headed back to town.
And he was with another officer, correct?
Yeah, he was with you call him a disinformation officer, a government worker, not a military, and they were going to handle that part of the report for the government.
Okay, so your grandfather and this other gentleman went and they hung out with Mac Brazel and they saw the debris field.
Right.
Okay, and all right, let's do slide number 3, Race. I don't even remember what slide number. Okay, I got this from Michael Schratt.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen it before.
And Jesse, tell me. I mean, to this day, were there 2 craft that collided? Was it one that broke apart over different areas? What do you understand that happened?
The way I understand it, I mean, it's not absolutely known, of course, but there was. In doing, I wrote a book a number of years ago, and just in doing the research and talking to enough people, it looked like there was actually 3 different sites. One was where my grandfather, which was that initial debris field, and then whatever left some of that debris ended up by crashing, further down the way in the kind of a side of a hill. And there was another crash site apparently a little further out. The thought was it was all the same vehicle that it either impacted and got back in the air and crashed, or something hit it in the air that might have crashed. That's kind of up for anybody's guess, but we don't really have anything specific that way, other than the amount of debris he found was quite large in the original debris field, and that was either the kinds of debris found in that initial field were, beams that supposedly could have been structural of some kind, a lot of foil, miles of would have been fiber optics, that kind of thing, and some plastic. My father always called it bakelite, but the old countertops back in the day,
Right.
in the 40s, was called bakelite.
Right.
And there was a lot of debris, and that the bakelite itself had felt like it was a burnt smell to it, for whatever reason it was kind of burnt up. There was a considerable amount of that too.
Do you think a UFO was struck by lightning that night?
Again, I could just postulate that it was, something caused whatever this was to crash. And, was it because of the storm? I mean, it was definitely a coincidence of it. All this happened during a very violent storm in Roswell, New Mexico. So, I mean, the logic would dictate it was probably some kind of anomaly, some kind of could have been lightning, could have been, something that caused the crash. I mean, our most sophisticated jets can crash from, this kind of thing. So it was, at best guess, I would probably say it had something to do with the weather.
Okay. All right. That's what I think. It's just a gut feeling. It seems to me that lightning and these poor aliens were like, uh-oh, right? It's just like, uh-oh, we weren't expecting that one. Ray, slide number 4, please. All right. So, Jesse, this is also from Michael Schratt.
Okay.
This is based on intensive research that he's done about Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
And there were several bodies there, several dead and one alive, apparently. And this is what he has researched.
Sure.
Did your grandfather ever talk about bodies at all?
This is the way I've kind of said before. The way my grandfather, because everybody wants to know what about the aliens, what about the aliens, and the government compartmentalizes investigations or what have you, and he wasn't with that team that went out to the second crash site, which I
Okay.
assume this is the big thing. And he would tell us anyway, as family, he would say, you can believe what those folks said, and what those folks said were multiple bodies and something was still alive. And he said we could believe them. There's a certain amount of he was kind of careful. He didn't want us to go through some of those things that he had gone through, and didn't want us to have to face people coming down us. I assume if you gave us specific information from him, but it was pretty safe for him to say that we could believe what these other people said. So definitely, in a way of concurring. And I and my family always loved it. He was always said with a wink and a smile that there's so much more I wish I could tell you. So about this and this, this kind of depicts it. There's a example like this windmill up in the corner on the first crash site had a windmill that was close to it. This was actually a number of miles away from that, as I understand, where this site would have been. But there is that. I mean, that is, in general, that's correct. So.
Yeah, Michael Schratt spent like 25 years researching this stuff. Most of his stuff comes from Leonard Stringfield. Okay, Ray, so we can kill that one. All right, so obviously now we move on into the cover-up. Now, I always feel bad for Walter Haut because, I'm a publicist. I claim to have probably written 10,000 press releases, right? Imagine you're Walter Haut, right? And someone says, Walter, we need a press release about UFOs and aliens. Okay, he writes it. It runs all over the world. Right. And within a few hours, my joke is Truman or someone in Washington heard their head must have exploded.
Yeah, exactly.
And someone calls poor Walter Haut and says, who the F are you to announce to the world that there's aliens without President Truman signing up, right? Can you imagine that poor bastard? Did you ever meet him? Did you ever meet Walter Haut?
I have not. No, I haven't. There is an interesting story about, when he wrote the first article on that. And part of what happened, and it was actually right, well, kind of as that story was being written, when my grandfather was going back to the base, he sent the government worker away. And when he left, he filled a box of debris and threw it in the trunk of his car and drove back. And breaking every rule he could imagine, stopped by his house and showed my father and his wife, my father Jesse Marcel II, and his wife Vio, this debris. And so he came home, went in the kitchen, spread it all over the floor, went and woke them up and said, "Hey, take a look at this stuff." And my father, in conversation with him, was basically, what is all this stuff? His wife saying, "Why'd you make a mess of my kitchen?" That kind of thing. And my grandfather said, "Son, just look at this stuff. Do you have any idea how it might fit together? Do you see anything that reminds you of, at the time it was tubes and, those kind of things." And in that conversation, my father basically said, "No, I don't, really know it. It doesn't. I don't see how it fits together." And one of the pieces in that debris was a beam, and it was an eye cross section, as my father described it. And as a child, he went to take a closer look under a light over the sink in the kitchen. And he was looking at it. He noticed if he actually went at an angle, these symbols would appear on it. And he said, "Hey, Dad, come here. What? Look, this is why. This is what does this mean?" And he said that what he was looking at could be a language from some kind of alien, and this debris is from a flying saucer. And that's what his thoughts were. And my dad was flying saucer because the saucer was a brand new term that wasn't really out there yet. And anyway, they went through all of it and then put it back in the box, and my grandfather went back to the base.
I wonder if your grandfather ever wished he had snuck off that beam and just hid it somewhere.
I still believe there is one out there that's kind of followed our family, and we're loosely looking for it, and
Wow.
doing our little some of our own ideas and our own evidence. I always love it because once in a while someone will come up with something. A lot of times people say stuff and I'm thinking, that's an interesting story. I've never heard that before. But once in a while, this has been a number of years ago, you'll hear say, wait, I remember my grandfather talking a little bit about what this person's talking about now. So I know there's a little bit of a crossover where maybe a piece is or that kind of thing. But
boy, would that be something, my friend? Would that be something?
What's interesting is like when my grandfather's in showing his son this debris and his wife, he is describing it as a spaceship, as a flying saucer. So it was significant for my grandfather to for what he had seen. This was from somewhere else and that kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting. And then the story comes out. And then, as the story goes along, anyway, I don't want to get it too far ahead, but, as the story starts playing out, it's kind of interesting when you look at all these pieces.
It's just fabulous. It's just, how old was your dad when he saw those things on the kitchen floor?
11, 12, that age.
Wow, very cool. All right, race number 5, please. Okay, so there's your grandfather.
Yep.
And what was going through this is obviously when they're, it's a weather balloon, it's a weather balloon. The biggest lie in the history of the United States, probably. What do you think? What was going through your poor grandfather's mind in this picture?
Well, I can kind of, when he was literally walking down the hallway, hey, sir, we're going to take some pictures of you with some of the stuff you found.
Yeah.
And in his mind, anyway, momentarily, I thought, oh my gosh, they're actually going to they're actually going to show what we found out there. And he was kind of excited.
Oh, okay.
And he walked in this room and looked around and like this material, it's like it's and the balsa wood sticks. I mean, it's all part of a Rowan target. He knew about Rowan targets. It wasn't like there was some kind of a mystery to him. And he realized right then that this is where it was going to start. The story was going to come from. And my sister pointed out, Denise, it's interesting enough, whenever any of these pictures of my grandfather in them, you'll normally when they take a picture of you look at the camera.
Yeah.
So you can see somebody's offside saying basically this, that, and the other, giving him orders on how to act or whatever.
He looked. I rescued a dog 2 months ago named Luke, and he's a great dog, and I've taught him a lot of things. And when he looks guilty, he looks at me just like your grandfather looks in that picture. Right? He's like, "Am I doing like General Ramey? Am I doing good? Am I a good boy? Am I a good boy? Right? Isn't that
am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? I mean, like I said, it's really. I think at this point things started really unfolding about what how the government and the military were going to handle this. Pretty much from this moment on, and my grandfather also became more and more a part of that. But yeah,
his heart must have just sank.
Yeah, when he got back to the house after these photos, he met with my father and grandmother, and this is where a definite right angle change was that you are not to tell anybody about what I showed you. This was in his words a non-event. It did not happen, and so he slammed that door shut real quick, and I don't know, was he warned that you're not to talk to your family, and they came down with a lot of gravity. Basically, you do not do this. You are now, basically going to have to get back in line as an intelligence officer, and you're going to do what you're told, and et cetera, et cetera.
And he did.
Yep.
Yeah. Race number 7, please. Yeah. Who was now? Ramey's on the left. Who is Dubois? Something.
Dubois. Yeah. I wish I might be. I could be incorrect about that. But yeah, this was part of the. This is just a broken up Rowan target. What's interesting is, like, if you study what a Rowan target is, of course, we have endless time to think about this stuff. I mean, it had like what would be a little tape player, had a microphone and wires, that kind of thing. That they're again they leave out of these photos, which have been a big part of what the debris would have been found, because there are lots of a train and that the train of balloons and that kind of thing, but they leave that out of there, the most obvious part, and they kind of set this up, and it's kind of like, well, it's interesting looking, it is from as a Rowan target, but
it looks like an aluminum foil kite is what
it's basically what it was. It was actually like a pyramid that focused sound to the mic, so they could pick up sound.
I see. Okay, race number 8, please.
It's actually very simple.
Okay, now you see what Ramey's holding in his hand. All right, race number 9, please. Number 9. That's from the Beatles. All right, Jesse, you've seen this, right?
Oh yeah.
So this apparently is what Ramey was holding in his hands, and it talks about a disc,
Yeah.
and it says we will ship to. I think it said Wright. Yeah, we will ship to Wright-Patterson Wright Air Force. Do you think this is correct? The text on this thing.
What I can say, which is more powerful than my words, is my father was very, very interested in this document. Very intrigued because it did fit with what he knew of the time, and what he'd learned through his father, of course, and the rest of it. So my father was he was very tight to the vest. You know, he talked about what he experienced and was very, you know, it's like, this is what I've done, this is what I've been involved with, and didn't go out of this. And of course, he wasn't directly involved in this document, but he really believed in this document, which to me adds a lot of credibility just because of what he experienced that, you know, most people hadn't. But he did, you know, maybe it's not 100% accurate, but it's definitely in the right direction.
I think so too. I think whoever was the genius that zoomed in on Ramey's note and came up with it, I think they should get a gold star. Number 3, he is. Race slide number 10, please. Oh, Race, there he goes. All right, Jesse, tell us a little bit about your grandfather, the person, and you knew him.
Yep.
Tell us about some of the nice memories you have of your grandfather.
This is more of the person that I knew is my grandfather at this age. You know, some of the fond memories were we go spend time. We drive from basically out of Clancy, Montana, down to Houma, Louisiana, and we'd always stop at the little fireworks stores and whatever on the way. Had a great time. We let off fireworks blowing, little cans in the air in the front, in my grandfather and grandmother's driveway. Spent a lot of time as kids. We did a lot of that stuff. All the drivers were made out of shells instead of rocks. It was kind of really cool way. But my grandfather, he was you go into his shop and it has that deep South smell. You know, that heavy, you know, whatever. There are boxes. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands, of tubes. And everything you possibly think about, a big ham radio that he spent a lot of time on, and he was missing one of the digits on his finger, one of his fingers. Yeah. And there's a saw there. So as a kid, I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, I was kind of scared of that thing. But I remember one morning we went out and this house backed up to a bayou, and we'd fish out there all the time. Okay. And one morning he got up and we drove to the store to get some bait and that kind of thing. And came back and we go into where his shop is, and he pulled bamboo sticks out of the rafters and then put on a spool, and we did the whole thing. It was all very manual, I guess you could say. And then we'd wander off, and then we'd look out for the water moccasins and fish in the bayou. And that's how I really got to know him on a one-on-one basis, was fishing with him on his bayou. And but he was very friendly, very nice, very, you know, like down to earth. You know, I didn't know anybody that ever said anything, you know, unless they had an agenda of some kind, that of ill will towards him. He was friendly and good to everybody. Just a very nice guy. Very petite. He's very small. Okay. We're all French, and he actually had to get in the military. He had to lie and get somebody else to agree to that lie for him even to get in.
Interesting.
But again, very nice, very jovial, very, you know, happy for the most part. Always had that, you know, deep Southern accent. His wife Vio had a deeper Southern accent. But we did that. Went in the Gulf with him. We went out and went crabbing and went back and had big, you know, feeds and that kind of stuff. But
did you ever ask him, grandfather or granddad, are there aliens? Did you ever just ask him outright?
Oh yeah, just he like, again, he was, when I said, you know, there is one story that's kind of interesting, and I've said it before, but it's in the debris field that he was involved with, there was some biomaterial, and it was wrapped up in some of the debris.
Okay.
And that was like, well, maybe that could have been somebody. Maybe that was one of them. Wow. That was about as far. And he said, but it could have been a cow that this thing hit, or a sheep actually that were out there. He wasn't sure, but there was actually something in the debris that he was part of. If I pressed him, he said, yeah, people saw aliens, you know, so you know, but not personally, but he did. I think there's a lot more to it than that. But
Is this common knowledge, what you just said?
yeah, it was actually on National Geographic, I think in the late 70s, maybe. And it came out, and I've never it's gone. Their story. It might be out there if you research it, but yeah, I thought it was pretty fascinating, and then it was kind of like pushed aside.
Maybe it was an arm or a leg. You know, who knows?
Well, it is. It said it was covered in some kind of. I mean, they knew it was biological, whatever it was, and
Wow.
bones and that kind of thing. And like I said,
Wow, that's
so
great.
it is fascinating. I mean, who knows? It's like the more I'm a little bit more. Excuse me. As it might sound, I'm actually more of a believer now than I used to be.
Okay,
It's
sure.
not. It's just when you start seeing more and being involved in more, and you open yourself up to more. It's almost like you get to the point where what isn't possible. It's like this whole Roswell story. It's not. I mean, I absolutely believe there's life in the universe other than here. I know. I would believe it just as much as I'm breathing right now. That there's life.
Right, right.
Really, was there technology that allowed something to get here or find us and then get here? It's a technological question. It's not about the significance of an alien. Yes, there are aliens out there, no question. Were they able to find us and get us here? That's the only question. The rest of it, and we're getting close to that right now. What we are, and we're perhaps hundreds, if not thousands of years behind whatever this was. So it's
Yes.
like it's almost ridiculous in my opinion to think that what if Roswell, what if this just it looked, smelled, it tasted, it just looked like a crash UFO. Maybe it wasn't, but there is so much out there that if to not embrace that life's out there, and that again we're getting close to the technology that could duplicate what's happening, which we could get us somewhere. It's just like, in my opinion, and my background's a lot more in science than it is in the rest of the stuff. So I kind of try to take a line, but there are elements within science that allow this to happen where we're at, and we're cavemen compared to a lot of this stuff. So it's like,
Didn't Ben Rich said we have the technology to take ET home? You've heard that before, right?
no, actually, I have not.
Yeah, Ben Rich was quoted in
Oh.
the 90s. He goes, "We've long had the technology to take ET home."
Well, so I know some people are actually working on what it takes to create something of a bubble that exists in our universe, but is not subject to the rules of our universe. Those kind of things. And it's interesting. I mean, when you get to some of the things that happen when you start looking at things really closely, we're just we're cavemen, compared to this stuff. It's fast. We don't have any idea about, and we can draw conclusions, and that's what we do, is draw conclusions. Well, we don't know how it's doing it, but it's doing it. And if we believe in that, well, how can we use that to our benefit? And that's whether it's I fully believe in life out there. I fully believe there's an infinite number of universes. There's actually, there is more reason to believe than not believe, in my opinion, anyway.
I totally
There's
agree
more
with
science
you.
behind it.
I totally agree with you. Race number 11, please. Junior, he was a medical doctor, right? That's him, right?
Yep, MD. He started out. He went through LSU out in New Orleans. Ended up by being in San Diego through the naval program, and that's where he joined, and was after graduating as a doctor. And that's actually where I was born, as a naval base down in San Diego. He was in a military career. He ended up being, as he progressed through his career, ended up becoming medical doctor with his own practice, that kind of thing. This was out of Helena, Montana, and at some point in Helena, I think it must have been, it was sometime in the early '80s, an attack battalion joined the National Guard in Helena.
Okay.
And he always wanted to fly helicopters, so he went through and became went through. At that time, he was a lieutenant colonel, and he went through and learned how to fly helicopters, and as time progressed on with the Iraq War, in mind, he was 72. He talked to his friends and said that, I really want to get out there. His whole thing was he wanted to get out there to save some young guy from going out there. He said, I'd rather put me on the front line.
So where do you think this photo was taken?
it's one of the bases in Iraq.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure which one.
Very cool.
And I was lucky. I used to be. I was a firefighter, a wildland firefighter, and in Missoula, Montana, I was. I drove trucks up, and we were in Missoula, and it just happened that he had to fly in, and then I actually was on a heli attack team, which I flew in helicopters to go to fight fires, and I got there, and somehow he got me on board a helicopter, and so I was able to fly once with my father in a Huey back to Helena. So that was quite an honor. It was a lot of fun. But he did that. He ended up becoming a flight surgeon. He was actually the oldest flight surgeon by far in Iraq, and a pilot. So he did both. And then they actually offered him brigadier when he was out there if you want to stay another year, but he couldn't do it. So he came back. So that was kind of the end of his military career. But he was very, very proud of his military career as being a doctor.
It's very sweet. Race, you can delete that one now. Yeah, I was very close to my father, and you were close to your father and your grandfather. And it's very sweet, man. I think that's wonderful. Race number 12. All right. So your dad wrote the Roswell Legacy book, which I've not yet read. Tell us a little bit about this book.
It all started as a project inside the family, actually, to write a book kind of about, everybody talks about, you guys need to write a book. Everybody, my dad needs to write a book, needs to write a book. And that's really just where this came from. It was just after thinking about doing it. And, at this point, he was more, towards the end, he was actually in Iraq when this was being, partly going right. He was writing things down when he was over there, sending them back here and building a book. So it was all during that period. And then once he returned, he just had it published. So, and you see forward by Stanton Friedman. Stanton Friedman was always a very good friend of our families, with our family and that kind of thing. And Linda Marcel was his wife, and his widow at this point, but they are together on this. But yeah, it was kind of his memories of what happened with Roswell, as far as affecting him.
Was your grandfather alive when this book came out?
No.
Okay. So it was a tribute to your grandfather in a way, right?
It had a lot to the legacy of Roswell, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit. It's a good book. It was more closely related to things that were directly relatable to my father and what he experienced and all those kind of things.
And Linda was not your mother, correct?
No, my mother passed away or in a car accident when I was a kid. So he ended up being remarried. Ended up with lots of kids. We had like 8 kids in our family. So we ended up with a big family.
It's a lot of Marcels running around.
All right, a lot. For better or worse, we're all over the place.
Speaking of books, I was going to save this till later, but I think now's a good time. Race, let's do number 13, the new one. This is your brand new book, my friend. Tell us about this one. It has not yet come out. This is a world exclusive. Tell us about this book.
It's basically there's two things behind it. It's basically just drawing a line between what the idea of how everything from government and society looks at things, and how as a species how we put ideas together, and following it through back from starting with Roswell. It doesn't have a lot to do with Roswell, but it starts with Roswell and what had happened then, and it follows through today. So it's just a compilation. It's kind of a lot of my thoughts and that kind of thing, and try to make sense of a lot of what's going out there and why things are done the way they're done, like that sort of thing.
Do you address drones in here?
Very much so. Yeah, it's part of that idea is like, if you have something that you don't know what's going on or can't control, there's a couple things you do. You either, deflect, look over there.
Right, exactly right.
Can't let you see because we have no clue what the rest of the stuff is.
Right.
It's the same thing over and over and over again. And I always looked at it. It's interesting because you try to look at the people in your government as being intelligent, and the people are releasing information out, and by having this going on and saying, it's nothing, don't look at it, we really don't know, it just makes it that more more interesting. And it's just there's a certain point at which I believe, and I don't think this is something that's happening right now. I think the stuff's been going on for 1,000 years, but it's just how how the government, in a way, it's a Rowan target. that kind of thing. Look over there. It's this. Don't even look at this.
It's a magician. That's what a magician does.
Right. Exactly. It's exactly. And the longer you go through this process of not really knowing what this is or saying what this is, these kind of things. I mean, a lot of them are just, just drones. But it sure is interesting that you're putting some of the stuff out there and not doing much about it.
Jesse, that reminds me of that Naked Gun movie where Leslie Nielsen's saying, "Nothing to see here."
I love Naked Gun.
And there's a car speeding into a building and exploding and all this shit.
I love all those. Yes, exactly. That's exactly right.
You're exactly right about that. That's exactly the way they do it. Don't look here.
Yeah,
nothing to see here.
Steve Bassett has been giving lectures that the drones are U.S. military drones, and they're up to deflect from the ET craft. There's all kinds of orbs and weird stuff that's extraterrestrial. But if everyone focuses on the drones, why are the drones? You're not looking at the orbs and the other things that are inexplicable.
It is. I mean, there isn't. There's enough crazy stuff. I'm lucky because the last name Jesse Marcel. People think you know something, right? And so I have foreign governments, you name it, get hold of me talking about what's going on there or what we're seeing here. And I mean, it's everywhere. Some fascinating stuff going on in China right now. Just all over the world. There's just so many unknowns, and some countries are just absolutely embracing this, thinking this is our evolution. And we're a little behind the ball on that, I guess. We're governmentally, but it's just it's hard to deny. And I love going in. I did a book tour a number of years back. I went through Brazil, and meeting some of these villagers that are very just simple life, very big, and they love talking about how we went in this field and we saw this happen and going through all these things. I had people coming in from all over the place to talk about the experiences they had with something odd, something strange. It's like Uruguay pilots. It just very fascinating. This stuff's been going on for as long as you can, as long as you can. It's like, half the stuff you look at the sky, you have no idea. I mean, a lot of it, a very high percentage is very explainable and it's just simple, but it's not all of it isn't.
Race, did you want to say something?
I didn't know if you guys have heard or not about some new developments. There was a guy who sent in a sort of a manifesto to a podcast guy named Sam Shoemate. He's a former military. These guys, he has a podcast website that, it has a lot of whistleblowers on it from the military, former and all that. Well, he on December 31st received an email from this guy who had been trying to reach him for about 3 weeks. And finally his email got through and he read it. And in it, it explained that he was a Green Beret, had been for 20 years. Mm-hmm. He worked on a mission in Afghanistan that he was having difficulty dealing with. It was lasing targets for opium operations and funded the Taliban. And a lot of civilians got killed and injured and maimed in those strikes. And he's having trouble dealing with those. On the back side of this letter, he goes on to talk about the drones on the East Coast and that he had firsthand knowledge of a program of drones that were gravitic, he called gravitic propulsion drones that only us and China have. And he said that China has been launching them from a submarine off the East Coast for a while. And that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it seemed like these drones, they were doing it while Biden was still in office, before Trump got here, where they were flying over the eastern seaboard and surveilling from Washington, Virginia, Massachusetts, that kind of Norfolk, all that kind of area, and then even some further inland. But then the next day, this guy in a cyber truck blows up under Trump's building in Vegas. And it took 2 or 3 days before they figured this all out and they connected all the breadcrumbs. But it was him, the very guy who committed suicide at Trump Tower, was the guy who sent him this. Like, yeah, he didn't want to injure anyone or hurt anyone. He was committing suicide because he was convinced that China was going to deliver a bad weapon over the White House. He basically stated that there's nothing that could stop these drones. They have a unlimited payload capacity, and that they could fly one right over the White House, hover over the White House, and detonate a huge bomb right over the White House. And he was thinking that the Third World War was coming. That's how sure he was. And he was trying to get this word out to like Joe Rogan and Fox News and a whole bunch of places that weren't listening to him, because I guess they thought he was a quack. And, but that was on the Sean Ryan show. If anyone follows that podcast, Sean Ryan is a former Navy SEAL, has his own podcast on YouTube. But I found that very interesting because it kind of went in line with some of the conversation that was going on about they were looking for something. They lost, nuclear material and that kind of thing. So, that was very interesting. But, they are it is our technology. So,
yeah.
So
I think that's true. Jesse, what do you think about the progress of the disclosure movement? The last couple of years, David Grush, Lou Elizondo, Gallaudet and Fravor and all these guys. What do you think about all those hearings?
I'm very optimistic about it, just because, some people take it on the way that, well, they're not releasing all the information. Well, I think that this is a precursor to more. I look at it very optimistically that disclosure is coming, and more than it has. I mean, just the idea that, the government can't deny certain, information travels too fast and too easily. There's a certain point at which, you can't cover your ears and whatever for so long. So I think it's a natural progression. So people are doing some great work out there. One of the things my father always wished the disclosure about Roswell would have come up before he passed away, and of course that didn't happen. But I think it's I think it's inevitable, in a way. I personally, I might have a different view about disclosure, and that I have my own thoughts and my own beliefs, and I'm kind of like I don't need the government to tell me that you're right or you're wrong or whatever. It's kind of one of those things. So I'm not a huge person about no, you guys got to come out and talk about it. I think, which a lot of people do, is that disclosure is going to come from something sitting in my front yard. You know what I mean? That's going to be the truest form, and the undeniability. And like I said, it's already starting to happen with science and the Webb telescope, and there's certain things that are starting to line up that you simply can't not deny. And it's not that don't trust your government, but a government has its own purpose, and one of those purposes is not disclosing some of the stuff. It's like they'll hold tightly on it as long as they can if they think it's going to impact power or whatever. So I'm not saying it's that simple, but it is one of those things. So I think it's a great thing. Things are happening. I think more things are coming down the road, and it's just the point you can't keep blocking all this stuff. But I think true disclosure is going to be done on a civilian level and not on a governmental level. So
our mutual friend Steve Bassett told me this morning that you and your sister were on a panel that he did in Washington. I guess it was in 2013, Citizens Hearing on Disclosure. Do you remember that?
Oh, very much so. It was actually the last time I saw my father. But yes, that was wonderful what he did.
Yeah, Stephen is like a dog with a bone, man. He's like a rabid dog. Oh. He wants disclosure yesterday. And, he's been doing it. This year is 29 years, every single day. I said, Stephen, next year's your 30th anniversary. We have to have a party or something.
Exactly. No, I have a tremendous respect for Stephen Bassett. So
he's crazy. So as you know, Stephen and I last year, we created 2023, we created the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Essentially, we bring Hollywood writers, producers, directors together with UAP, ET, researchers, experiencers, and disclosure advocates. We have about 200 members. You are a founding member. In your opinion, how has Hollywood handled this issue up so far, and how do you think perhaps Hollywood could help play a role in disclosure?
At the end of the day, Hollywood specifically is that, a lot of these same people have, their celebrity, whatever, celebrity class. They have their own beliefs, their own sightings, their own, that kind of thing. And it's just, they just command a much bigger audience. So if a well-known actor or actress comes out and says, hey, I saw something last night, more people are going to listen to them. So I think it's a great way to look at it. I mean, it's the same way a celebrity goes is politically, when they say something, a lot more people involved. And so I think it's really important. Obviously, there's celebrities in the past have come out and said, there's something out there. But I think the more you could bring in, which I'm very excited about, the more you can bring in people with large audiences, it takes it out of the hands of, you can't manipulate. It's just, if you have millions of people coming in, listening to somebody, I don't care what somebody's squawking over here, it's going to get out. So I think it's a great idea.
Recently Taylor Swift was wearing on two different occasions. Taylor Swift wore a UFO dress, with a big UFO. And I put on my Facebook, I put, you're going in the right direction when the world's biggest star is wearing a UFO on her dress, right? If she said I saw extraterrestrials and they came and I talked, that would be disclosure. She could do it by herself.
Yep, that would be again. That's probably where more disclosure is going to come from. Is that right? Again, there's honestly, it's like people on the civilian level, if you want to call it that way, usually aren't as agenda driven. They don't have to follow a rule book somewhere. You just do what you want, do what feels right to you. So that's the reason I think that a lot of that. And that's where this disclosure with the government. I mean, it's not like these people are they're smart enough to realize that there's so much talk out there right now that you can't keep ignoring the population. And I always remember one time when I was talking about something happened. Once in a while I'll be in talk about my day job, my regular business stuff, and somebody will recognize my name, just Marcel. Hey, are you related to that? Whatever. It actually happens quite often. And I said, yeah, that was my grandfather. An interesting story is we just had a little convention for our company out in the Woodlands, Texas, and a gentleman walks up and he's a very, very interesting, dapper fellow, and he mentions that his father knew my grandfather. And it's well, it's 1,000,000 to 1 out of Houma, Louisiana. I think, wow, it's interesting, the connections out there, and I like this thing about this what's going on right now. It's somebody said, oh well, you're related or whatever. Some people think, oh, my father or not or whatever, but I always say, yeah, I'm the grandson. And I always ask them, I said, well, what do you think of all this? And they said, with what's going on out there, who wouldn't believe in this? So that's actually the momentum's completely changed, where people are actually happy to come out and talk about it. And it's actually, I can't think of the last time I talked to somebody who didn't believe there's something going on out there, UAP, those kind of things. They're of course people are going to be talking to me because of who I am, but honestly, there's almost, I can't think of the last time somebody came up and said, oh, that's hogwash,
Yeah, I understand. So 2027 will be the 80th anniversary of the crash.
Yeah.
It's 2 years from now. I mean, do you go to, historically, I'm sure you've gone to some UFO conventions and things. You must be like John Lennon walking through the crowd. There's Jesse Marcel. There's Jesse Marcel. You have one of the most famous last names in all of ufology.
Well, some people are really nice. Like I went the last time I was down there for the 75th, because they put a UFO and stuff in the sidewalk out there representing my grandfather. So it was nice to be able to go out there and give a little speech. So I got there once, not very often. Definitely the 80th. I'm sure I'll be there. Yeah, it's a great crowd.
Yeah, I've made so many friends in the last few years. I'm the publicist for Contact in the Desert. Okay. I've been going. This will be my 3rd year, and I've made so many great friends. Some are a little colorful, kooky, nutty.
Oh, absolutely, it makes the world go around.
But I used to go to Comic-Con too. Comic-Con, they're dressed up like Mr. Spock and Sulu. They're ET phone home. And but Contact is real experiencers and real researchers. And some of them are eccentric, but they're not, they don't have Mr. Spock's ears. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty cool. Anything else we missed? Just real quick, you're the design officer at Airborne Motor Works. What does that mean? What does that mean? What do you do for a living?
Originally I came up with an idea. Well, it started with flying cars, and I just designed a flying car that I really liked. I have a knack at designing things, but there wasn't any kind of propulsion that would work with it. So so I designed a propulsion system, and then went and got a patent, this registered patent on the propulsion system. Joined with another fellow, named Jeff Clementi out of the Woodlands, Dr. Clementi, and he said, this is cool, but your propulsion system is more important than anything you're doing. So we formed a company, and that's where Airborne Motorworks came from. And as we progressed, and I get ideas, I draw them up, design whatever that is, which usually it was propulsion for quite a while. And then I get patents, and we get patents around the world, and then we move the company forward in that direction. But recently, with all the wind turbine stuff and that thing going on, you realize we have a propulsion system that's ultra efficient. And if you, instead of pushing, you allow it to be pushed, now you have a generator. So I just received some patents regarding a new kind of wind turbine. And now I just kind of off subject here, but we just got approved through as a patent cooperation treaty. 158 countries, we went through their system, and they agree that what I've created is novel, industrial, and different than anything out there. So we're actually in the process right now to Dallas, Texas, where we're moving to the company, to building a new kind of wind turbine.
That's
doesn't look like anything out there.
I was thinking your grandfather must be very proud with his radio vacuum tubes, and you're creating flying cars. Jesse, thank you, brother. This was so much fun. We have to wrap up. You have a new website or something that people can contact you?
Yeah, it's a little rough. JesseMarcel.com. It's basically a credit card, or not credit card. It's like a business card kind of website, but it has a little bit about me, contact information, that kind of thing. When the book comes out, it'll be on there. When I need to get my social media act together and go ahead and link it all together. But if anybody wants, it's just JesseMarcel.com.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for doing the show. I really appreciate it. And Race, thank you for being my producer. And I'll see you guys next week. Hope the fires in LA are gone by tomorrow. And my thoughts and prayers to all my friends who are being affected. I'll see you guys next week live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.